Hello and welcome to this video on 11th grade biology by Perfect's course. This is Preetinder Kaur, and the topic that we are going to cover in this video is based on animal tissues. So you must have watched the videos that were focusing on the anatomy and physiology of plants, and we did different kinds of structures in plants. Now it's the turn to do a little more about animal tissues. So if you see animal tissues, animals have roughly four main kinds of tissues in them. So the first one is known as epithelium, or you can also call it epithelial tissue. The next one is known as connective tissue, for example, blood. The next one is muscular tissue. And the fourth kind of tissue in animals is known as neural tissue, that is present in the nervous system of the body. Now further, these tissues are classified. So I'll give you a brief idea about the classification and then we'll do the tissues in detail one by one. So coming to the epithelium, epithelium is divided into two main types of further subtissues. One is known as simple epithelium. The other one is known as a compound epithelium. Now within simple epithelium, there are three main types of simple epithelial tissue. You have squamous, then you have cuboidal, and finally columnar. So based on how these three are arranged, you can either get a simple tissue or a compound tissue. Coming to the connective tissue, the connective tissue is of three main types. One is loose connective tissue, then you have dense connective tissue, and finally specialized connective tissue. Coming to loose, there are two main tissues that we'll be covering under this. One is areolar and the next one is adipose tissue. Coming to the dense one, you have two types. One is regular and the other one is irregular. And coming to the specialized tissue, these are ones that have been specialized to perform specific functions: cartilage, bone, and blood. So these are the three kinds of specialized connective tissue. Coming to the third one, which is muscular tissue. Muscular tissue is basically only of three types. You have skeletal muscles, then smooth muscles, and finally the ones that are found in the circulatory system, cardiac muscles. So we'll be covering all of these tissues in detail one by one in this video. So let's get started with the epithelium. Now as I told you, epithelium, either you can call it epithelial tissue, so let me call it epithelium. Now that is a tissue that is made up of a free surface and it has a lot of compact cells, very little intercellular matrix is there. That means the cells are tightly packed to one another. And I also told you about the two types. One is simple epithelium. The other one is compound epithelium. Now the difference in both of them is that the simple epithelium is present in one layer. One single layer is there, and usually it is used as a lining for body cavities or for ducts of glands and different tubes in the body. Coming to the compound epithelium, this has two or more layers of cells. And the basic function of compound epithelium is protective in nature. And we also did the further few types of the simple epithelium. We have the first one, which is squamous. So as the name suggests, the cells are flattened. And as you can see, there is very less intercellular space between these cells. So that is an example of a squamous epithelium. The places in the human body where the squamous epithelium is found are blood vessels, the air spaces and the air sacs in the lungs. And basically, they're very, very thin because they help in forming a diffusion boundary. So that point is worth mentioning over here. Whenever materials like air or nutrients have to move from one place to another, they move through these squamous epithelium cells. The second one is cuboidal, which, as the name suggests, are more like cubes, like this, with one nucleus each. And in these cuboidal cells, these are basically found in the ducts of glands and the tubular parts of the nephrons. This kind of epithelium is also found in the PCT of the nephron, which is the proximal convoluted tubule in the nephron, and sometimes the PCT of nephron, which is made up of this kind of epithelium. It also has structures for absorption that are known as microvilli. So that is about the cuboidal epithelium. The third one is columnar. As the name suggests, you will be able to see long columns of cells that are really long, like this, with again one nucleus each, very less intercellular space. And usually the free surfaces there, it may have microvilli. So let's write that down. For absorption, obviously, and it's usually found in the lining of the stomach and the intestine. So what happens is that the cuboidal and the columnar cells, they have cilia on them, and in that case they are known as ciliated epithelium, and these are hair-like structures that help to move particles or liquids or materials in a specific direction, and so they are found on the inner surface of bronchioles in the lungs, and also in case of the fallopian tubes. Now, in some cases, the epithelium is found in glands. In that case, it is known as glandular epithelium. And glandular epithelium is of two types. One is unicellular, and the other one is multicellular. Now, the unicellular is found, for example, in goblet cells, which are there in the alimentary canal. Multicellular is obviously when lots of cells are there that are acting as small glands. These are present in salivary glands. And since we're talking about glands, some extra information that I would like to add here. The glands that are present in the human body, they are of two types. One is endocrine glands, which do not have their own duct. They do not have their own duct, and that is why they pour out their secretions, known as hormones, directly into the bloodstream or in the lymph system. And then you have exocrine glands, where the glands like the salivary glands or pancreas, they secrete their secretions like saliva or oil or mucus directly outside the surface through their own ducts. So exocrine glands, they have got ducts, and endocrine glands, they do not have any ducts. So that was about the simple epithelium tissue. Next, let's go to the compound epithelium, which is also an important part. So coming to compound epithelium, in this case, more than one layer is present, and the basic function is to give protection. Give protection against any kind of chemical or mechanical stress. Usually they are found on the dry surface of the skin or on the moist surface of the buccal cavity, even in the pharynx, the lining of the salivary, the ducts of the salivary glands, the inner lining of the ducts of the salivary glands. And even in the pancreatic ducts. Now, between lots of cells within the compound epithelium, there are joinings known as junctions. Now, junctions are further of three types. One is known as a tight junction. That is used when you need to stop leakage of substances. So that is a tight junction. The second kind is adhering junction. That is present when the cells have to perform a cementing function, when two kinds of cells have to keep stuck to each other. And the third one is known as a gap junction. This is when two or more cells have to communicate with each other and they have to be connected. So the gap junction helps to connect their cytoplasm as well. So that was all about the epithelium tissue, which is the first kind of tissue that we have to do. The second kind of tissue is the connective tissue. Now, the connective tissue is the most abundant form of tissue that is available in our body. And I hope you remember we have done the three kinds of connective tissue: loose, dense, and specialized. So I'm going to start off with the loose connective tissue. The first one is areolar. Now, areolar tissue is present beneath the skin and it is comprised of three main elements, that is fibroblasts, macrophages, and cells that are known as blast cells. So their main function is to give support. The next kind of loose connective tissue is adipose tissue, which is again present beneath the skin and it is specialized to store fat. Whatever extra nutrients the body gets that it does not need, those extra nutrients are converted into fat and stored under the skin. So that excess nutrients, they are stored as fat in the adipose tissue. That is about the loose tissue. Coming to the dense connective tissue, I hope you remember we did two further types. One was regular, the other was irregular. Coming to the regular, in the regular, the collagen fibers are present in rows. So let me write that down. The collagen fibers are present in rows between many parallel bundles of fibers. And this kind of tissue is found in the tendons and the ligaments. Now remember, tendons are that connective tissue that joins the muscles to the bones, and ligament is that connective tissue that joins bones to bones. And the second kind after regular is the irregular dense connective tissue. Now in case of irregular, it has fibroblasts and the cells are scattered. There is no orderly arrangement of collagen fibers or the other fibers, and the orientation of the collagen fibers is totally different, and the location where it is found maximum is the skin. So skin is where you can find the irregular dense connective tissue easily. Coming to the third type, which is specialized connective tissue. The first one that we have to do is cartilage. The cartilage is softer than bones. It is found on the tip of the nose and it's also found in the ears, the external ear. Now in cartilage, lots of intercellular material is there, but all that intercellular matter, it is not compressible, means you cannot press it and make it smaller, but it is, yes, it is solid and it is pliable, means it can be bended into shapes and changed. The cells of the cartilage are known as chondrocytes and they are enclosed in small cavities. And when humans are born, when the babies are born, most of the cartilages in the vertebrate embryos, they are replaced by bones in adult, and it's present in different areas, like I told you, the outer ear, even between bones of the vertebral column, in the limbs, and even in the hands. The second important specialized connective tissue is bone. We'll be discussing the details of the cartilage and the bone in detail later on as well. But right now you need to know that the bones, they have a very hard and non-pliable ground substance. So you cannot change it or twist it like you can change the cartilage. So non-pliable substance is there, which is very rich in calcium salts and collagen fibers. And the cells of the bone, they are known as osteocytes. So I'll be drawing a rough diagram over here. So here you can see the diagram. That's the main cells that are shown. Now these bone cells are known as osteocytes. These little bug-like things that you can see, that is one osteocyte, and they're present in spaces known as lacunae or lacuna, and limb bones like the long bones of the legs, and they also help to serve the functions that are related to picking up and carrying excess weight. Additionally, these kind of bones, the connective tissue, it also interacts with the skeletal muscles that are attached, and they help in bringing out movement. And there is a substance in some major bones that is known as bone marrow. That is one of the sites present in the human body that helps in the manufacture of blood cells. And with that, we come to the third kind of specialized connective tissue, which is blood itself. It's a fluid connective tissue. It contains plasma, which is the floating matter. Within plasma, you have the red blood cells, the white blood cells, and the platelets. And that's the main circulating fluid that helps in transport of various substances. And we will learn about blood in detail, but in the later videos. So that was all that you need to know about the connective tissue right now. The third kind of tissue that we have to cover is the muscular tissue. Now, before we go ahead and find out the different kinds of muscular tissue, you need to know that each muscle, it is made up of lots of fibers arranged in parallel ways. So lots of muscle fibers are there. Additionally, these fibers are they're known to be composed of fibrils. And these fibrils are known as myofibrils. The muscle fibers, they even contract and relax, and then they come back to their uncontracted state in a coordinated fashion. That is how the action happens. And this action helps the human body to adjust, to change its, let's say, to move from place to place, or to make certain body movements in the various parts of the body. So basically, in general, you can say that muscles have a very important and very active role in each and every movement of the body. And according to where the muscles are situated and what kind of functions they perform, we have three kinds of muscles. We have skeletal muscles, then we have smooth muscles, and finally we have cardiac muscles. Now, as the name suggests, the skeletal muscles, they are closely related to the skeletal bones. For example, if you take a muscle such as the biceps, striated skeletal muscle fibers will be there in a parallel fashion. And then there will be muscle fibers in the middle that will be covered by a layer or a sheath of connective tissue. So I'll draw a diagram for this. So here's a diagram, and these are arranged in bundles of fibers that are covered by connective tissue. And these small lines that you can see, these are the striations. So that is about the skeletal muscles. Coming to the smooth muscles, the smooth muscle tissue. So that is how the smooth muscle fibers look like. And within each of these cells, you can see that there is a nucleus as well. Now the smooth muscle fibers, they are tapering at both ends, so they're spindle shaped, and that is known as fusiform. That is the shape of these cells, which is tapering at both ends. The cell junctions are there that hold them together, and they're bundled together again in a layer of connective tissue. Now the wall of these organs, such as blood vessels or the stomach or the intestine, they have this kind of muscle. These muscles are involuntary. That means they cannot move, they cannot be directly controlled by our, let's say, our own decisions. And usually we are not able to contract or expand these muscles according to our will. On the other hand, the skeletal muscles, they can be moved, and that is how we make voluntary movements. So that is one important difference between the skeletal and the smooth muscles. The third kind of muscle is the cardiac muscle, which, as the name suggests, is present in the heart. That is a tissue that is present only in the heart. The cell junctions. This is an important thing to know about the cardiac muscles. The cell junctions, they fuse the plasma membranes of the muscle cells, and that means the cells basically stick together. The cells of the cardiac muscles, they stick to each other because these plasma membranes are fused. And there are communication junctions known as intercalated discs that are present. They help the cells to contract as a unit. That means when one cell receives a signal to contract, the neighbor or the neighboring cells also start contracting. So if I draw a diagram, it will appear like this. So these little bands that I've highlighted, that shows the junction between the adjacent cells. And here is first cell, second cell, third cell, fourth, fifth, and sixth. And they each have their own nucleus. And within these cells also you can see the similar kind of striations that are present in the skeletal muscles. So the skeletal muscles and the cardiac muscles, they're both striated, while the smooth muscles are unstriated. And these cells are also, obviously, they are involuntary. The heart does not move according to our will, it just keeps on beating. And these muscles also do not get tired. So that is all that you need to know about the cardiac muscles right now. The next kind of tissue that we need to cover, the fourth kind, is the neural tissue. Now, the neural tissue is present in the nervous system of the body that has the maximum control over the body's response and reaction to the changing environment. The unit of the neural system is a neuron, which is a nerve cell. Now, neuron, it's very excitable. That means one little stimulation is enough to make it active. Then there is the remaining neural system that is made up of neuroglial cells that makes up the remaining system. And the neuroglia, they make up more than 1/2 of the volume of the neural tissue in our body. So more than 50% of the neural tissue in our body is made up of these particular cells. So if I draw a neuron cell, it would be like this. So that would be the basic structure, and this is the main cell, this is the nucleus of the cell. These extra extensions that help to connect to the nearby neurons, these are known as dendrites. This is the cell body with the nucleus. This area where it is attached to the synapse, that is the axon. This covering is known as myelin sheath. And this myelin sheath, that is the overall covering, that is composed of these cells. These cells are known as Schwann cells. We'll be doing them in detail once we go and discuss the topic of the nervous system. But right now you need to have this information. And these nodes that you can see, those are known as nodes of Ranvier. And this end over here, this is the axon terminal. Now what happens is when some kind of stimulation is given to the neuron, there's an electrical disturbance that is generated that travels along the plasma membrane. And this arrival, it disturbs the neuron's endings as well and the output zone, and thus it starts the different events that can inhibit or stimulate the adjacent cells or other kinds of cells and perform the function that they are supposed to perform. So this video has basically covered the basics of each of these 4 different kinds of tissues that are found in an animal body. And we'll be discussing these tissues in detail once we cover the different organ systems. So that is all for this video. Don't forget to share us at Facebook and visit our website perfect-scores.com for more such videos related to the same topic. And if you have any feedback or suggestions, you can mail them at the Gmail address. Thank you so much for watching this video.